Can you hear me okay in the back? All right. So let's just talk for a minute about the present dilemma, where we are. The traditional approach to healing was actually born, at least in the Western world, was born on the battlefield in the Civil War and in the World Wars. And it's based around what I like to call heroic measures. And that means if you're a soldier in the Civil War and a cannonball comes bouncing along and it takes off your leg, heroic measures are going to need to be performed to save your life, right? So modern medicine waits until there's a crisis that erupts, and it focuses on external causes of disease and dramatic intervention and on symptom suppression, right? So here's what can happen. Susie goes to her doctor with a cough, and he prescribes the antibiotic amoxicillin and says, this will take care of that. And as a side effect of the antibiotic, she gets this lovely yeast infection, goes back to the doctor, and he prescribes the antifungal drug diflucan and says, well, this will take care of that. And with her immune system depressed, Susie is getting depressed, so her doctor prescribes the antidepressant drug Prozac and says, this will take care of that. And what are we chasing here? Symptoms. We're chasing symptoms, right, which is kind of a losing game, really. Well, like it does for others, the Prozac elevates Susie's blood pressure, so her doctor prescribes the anti-high blood pressure drug Captopril and says, this will take care of that. And as is not uncommon, Captopril gives Susie a cough, so she goes back to the doctor and he prescribes the antibiotic amoxicillin and says, this will take care of that. And around we go. How many of you know somebody that's in this kind of a cycle? Yeah. Pretty much everybody except those of us in this room, right? How many of you know somebody who is over 60 who is taking at least 10 different medications? Yeah. Or less than that. Yeah. Bad stuff. Well, the end result of this is that Susie, because she's so programmed like everybody else, feels lousy, but she feels lucky because her insurance paid for 90% of all these drugs, and isn't that the important thing? This is how bamboozled people are, okay? Our job is to try to unbamboozle them, all right? So, well, medical errors and prescription drug misuse or overdose are among the leading causes of death. Many surgeries are drastic and considered unnecessary, okay? Even by the medical profession. Okay? They've done studies and found a lot of surgeries are unnecessary. The U.S. spends the highest amount of money per capita on healthcare of every other country in the world, $2.6 trillion in 2010, and rising each year. Crazy. The U.S. ranks as the least healthy country in the world, ranking number 1 for degenerative diseases. And just coincidentally, I think, I could be wrong, but don't you think that maybe the U.S. has the most amount of marketing spent on drugs? Is there a correlation? I think there is, despite all that money that's spent on healthcare. Well, there's a man named Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and here's what he said. He said, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize itself into an undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men and companies and deny equal privileges to others and will constitute the Bastille of medical science. Was that prescient of him? Amazing, huh? Prophetic, really. Well, medical ideas change. You know, bloodletting was common until not that long ago, really. And the idea then was, well, we know what's wrong with you, John. You have too much blood. So we'll let out a bunch of your blood. And if you survive that, then that was the problem, right? How many of you had your tonsils taken out? Okay. Well, I didn't have mine taken out, but I knew a lot of kids that did. And I knew why, because they got what? Ice cream, right? You get all the ice cream that you can eat. Remember that? How many of you remember that? That must have been some kind of early marketing ploy, I think. You know, those were considered good surgeries, tonsillectomies, appendectomies. You know, it was only a few years ago that they finally figured out what the appendix is. It finally has a purpose now. It used to be really that it was there only for doctors to take it out. That's why it existed, right? Now we know the tonsils form part of the ring of Waldeyer, part of the body's immune system, part of the body's first line of defense against cancer, and so on. The appendix has a purpose. The bacterial flora that live in your gut will hide out down there in the appendix. And so if you get really sick with some kind of disease that wipes out all your intestinal flora, you can repopulate your intestinal flora from the flora that's hiding in your appendix, hiding out. Unless you've had your appendix removed. So we'll have a moment of silence for those of you that have had your appendix taken out. Sorry. All right. Well, drugs and surgeries are currently overused solutions, but the established order is loath to change. And in fact, Galileo was forced to recant his opinions about the sun being the center of the universe, okay, in 1633. He knew the sun wasn't the center of the universe. He'd proven it, but yet he was forced to recant. Yet after that, he was heard to mutter under his breath, "Eppur si muove," which means, and yet it moves. So